Will you follow me when the sky starts to change? Yeah, we won't be afraid. We'll never be the same again.
You're streaming with the Fantasy Follow. It's week 9. We're ready to go. Let's get this fantasy football thing started. It starts right now. It's a big day of football. You can do this. Make those good decisions. There's never a better time than this week. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Fantasy Follow. This is the TFF Live Sunday pregame show. It's week 9. We're ready to go. A lot of great matchups today. A lot of information to go through with you as always. But as usual, we are here for your live chats. The live chat is open. We got that message pinned on your YouTube site there. Feel free to drop us a chat throughout the entire show. We will answer your fantasy football questions all along the way, getting you ready for your matchups. We'll take you right up until game time today. As always, if you're watching on replay, feel free to drop us a comment. Let us know your thoughts about the day's worth of action. But either way, let's get right into it. We'll start out as usual with a recap of last week. I see some live chats already ready to go. We're going to run through last week's action first, get you started on your day here. Starting out as usual at the quarterback spot. And as I'm just getting my other screen prepared here, because I literally have been changing lineups as we speak right up until the start of the show here. And I might even have to change some lineups during the show today with everything that's going on with injuries and whatnot. So at any rate, looking back at last week, it was Josh Allen leading the way for the quarterbacks. 249 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, 29.50 fantasy points for Allen. A nice day there, 55 yards on the ground with a touchdown there as well. Mike White for the Jets in second with that big game, 28.10 fantasy points. Jimmy Garoppolo from the 49ers, a potential streamer this week. 332 yards passing. White was 405 through the air, by the way. Garoppolo, 332. 2 touchdowns on the ground for Garoppolo last week, 27.30 fantasy points. Tom Brady on bye this week, but last week he was in fourth. 27.20 fantasy points, 375 through the air, 4 touchdowns. Brady having a great year. Justin Fields for the Bears last week was at the number 5 spot, 26.30 fantasy points, 175 through the air with a touchdown, but added 103 on the ground with a touchdown there as well. We will see if Fields continues his nice play. That's your top 5 at the quarterback spot. Last week at the running back spot, it was Michael Carter leading the way for the Jets, 32.20 fantasy points. That was 77 on the ground with a touchdown. 14 targets, 9 catches, 95 yards through the air. Big day there for Michael Carter. Nice to see him have a nice game here if you've been holding on to him all season long. The rest of the top 5, Joe Mixon for the Bengals, 25.10. That was 33 on the ground, 58 through the air with a touchdown through the air. Austin Eckler for the Chargers, 24.40, 64 on the ground, 60 through the air. Touchdown on the ground for Eckler last week. Aaron Jones, 24.00, 59 on the ground with a touchdown, 51 through the air, 11 targets for Jones last week. And then Darrell Henderson last week rounding out the top 5 with 22.30 fantasy points, 90 yards on the ground with a touchdown, and also adding just a couple, 3 yards through the air, but have had a touchdown there as well. At the wide receiver spot last week, it was A.J. Brown leading the way. It'll be interesting to see what happens with that Tennessee offense now without Derrick Henry. I think A.J. Brown is about to pick it up for the rest of this season. So for those of you who have been kind of waiting on Brown and looking for better days, I think better days are ahead. Last week, 31.50 fantasy points, 155 yards receiving, 10 catches on 11 targets. In second, it was Michael Pittman. Again, this was last week, not Thursday. 30.60 fantasy points for Pittman there. 10 catches on 15 targets, 86 yards, 2 touchdowns there. Chris Godwin for the Bucks, 28.0 fantasy points. That was 140 through the air on 8 catches, 12 targets with a touchdown. Tyreek Hill for the Chiefs, 27.40 fantasy points, 94 yards receiving with a touchdown, 18 targets. 18 targets, 12 catches. And then Tyler Lockett, the good Tyler Lockett shows up. It's the boomer bust version. In 5th place, 26.20 fantasy points. Lockett, 13 targets, 12 catches, 142 yards through the air. At the tight end spot last week, your number one player was TJ Hawkinson. No surprise there. Hawkinson fulfilling what we expected to him, having some better days there. 18.90 fantasy points last week, 11 targets, 10 catches, 89 yards. Dan Arnold for the Jags in second, 14.80 fantasy points, 10 targets for Arnold there, 8 catches, 68 yards. In third, it was Pat Freiermuth from the Steelers, 14.40 fantasy points, 44 yards with a touchdown there, 7 targets, 4 catches. Dallas Goedert from the Eagles, 7 targets, 6 catches, 72 yards, 13.20 fantasy points. And then Brevin Jordan, we haven't used the who in a while, but I'm pretty sure it applies there for the Texans. 3 catches on 4 targets, 41 yards, had a touchdown, 13.10 fantasy points. Those are your top players there in last week's action. All right, let's go ahead and get a couple of quick chats here before we look at the actives and inactives. There are a lot to go through today, a lot of people to be aware of that are out there, and they've been actually coming in pretty slow on the site that I use to look them up. I've been refreshing quite regularly, so we'll take a look at those shortly. Let's start out with the chats. The first thing we'll do is we'll put up our reminder. That was actually not the reminder, but that was an earlier tweet or an earlier chat that I put out there. This is the reminder I meant to put up. The live chat is open for the entire show. We are here to answer your fantasy football questions. We'll start out with Alexander Garcia Osuna, who says morning, and I say morning right back. And you say you were waiting on the notification button with a question about your flex. So let's get it. Here's your first question here. Tua is out. I have Waddle in at flex. Do I roll with Waddle or do I slide in Julio Jones, Adrian Peterson, or Devonta Smith? I have A.J. Brown and Debo as my receiving core and Christian and Henderson as running backs. Well, let's do this. Let's start out with putting some matchup numbers up to try to help you out here. We'll put up the wide receiver matchup numbers and take a look at some of that information first. I have an instinct reaction to this question already, but I'll put the numbers up first. I'll tell you my instinct. My instinct reaction first is if you felt like you were comfortable going with Waddle, then I think you should still be comfortable going with Waddle. To me, there hasn't been a significant drop-off from Tua to Jacoby Brissett this year. If anything, I haven't been really high on Tua all year anyway. I had planned to play Tua in a couple of leagues this week, as a streamer, and took him out of the lineup. But the matchup here is pretty good. Going up against Houston, that's a home game. That's a 1:00 game. Houston fantasy points to the wide receiver spot 13th, so just below the green there for Waddle. And we look at Julio Jones against the Rams. That is the Sunday night football game, and that is a road game. The LA Rams fantasy points to wide receivers 18th, so the matchup is a little farther down. Obviously, we would expect a little bit more pass play from Tennessee. It's hard to say how this is going to play out with Derrick Henry out this week. There's a lot to be learned in this first game here. I think that Adrian Peterson is a reasonable thought, although I don't know how much of an expectation I have for Peterson this week. I have a feeling that he's going to have a lot more play down the road, being that he's so new to the offense and so new to playing this year. I would guess that they would only split time for him, that he wouldn't really get a full workload, whereas in future weeks, they would probably slot him in closer to the role they've been using Henry as. I think that's why they went out and got him, because they know that Peterson is a guy who wants to get all those touches. I just don't know if that's going to happen this week. I think this is probably, if you were going to lean on either of the two guys for Tennessee, I think that Jeremy McNichols might be a better option this week But again, it's hard to know how that's going to play out. If we look at the matchup numbers, again, the Rams, they're on the left side of your screen as fantasy points to the running back spot. The Rams currently at 15th. So it's a middle-of-the-road matchup. Going back to the wide receivers for Devonta Smith, Philadelphia home against the Chargers. That is a 4:05 game. And the Chargers second to last in terms of fantasy points to the wide receiver spot. Devonta Smith, to me, hasn't really showed what I hoped for this season. So my expectations are a little bit lower on him than they might have been earlier on in this season as well. I think you're fine with Brown and Debo as long as Debo is healthy. Christian looks like he's going to play. I don't know what the workload is going to be there. Henderson, I think you're fine with. I think the bottom line is my original thought. I don't think I see anything in the matchups that changes my original thought here. The matchup is actually slightly better for Waddle than it is for Julio. With no Devontae Parker for the Dolphins, you would expect Waddle to be among the receivers, probably their main guy. I know Mike Gesicki is going to have a lot of work there. But I think it's basically if you were comfortable with Waddle with Tua in there, then I don't know if there's a lot of reason not to be comfortable with Waddle with Brissett in there. And even if we look back at previous games where Brissett played, I don't know if I will be able to, because I don't off the top of my head know exactly which weeks those were, but I'm going to look it up to see if it helps you out here. And again, we'll give a little bit more time to these questions early on in the show than we will later on in the show. So if you're on the chat, get your questions in early, because once we get to the later part of the show, it's going to be rapid fire to make sure we get you answers before game time starts here. I'm looking back to find myself here, Jalen Waddle, and here's what I see for Waddle. Just to look at his target share as the year progressed, I want to say that Brissett played probably after Tua got hurt in week 2 against Buffalo. So from that point on, it was Brissett up until a couple weeks ago. If you look at the targets starting after week 2 for Waddle, 13 in week 3, 4 in week 4, 6 in week 5, 13 in week 6, 8 in week 7, and 11 there in week 8. And I want to say that Tua started back up in week 7. So, yes, his target share was a little bit all over the place. I don't know if that's a Brissett thing or if that's just a Miami offense thing. I think their whole offense has been a little bit all over the place. But again, if you felt comfortable with, I think that's the bottom line. And so I think that's really the only way that I can put it. I'm going to look up real quick here to see when, what games Tua did not play. And Tua did not play. He started back up in week 6. So you had 3 games of those targets with Brissett, a little bit up and down. The targets did seem to be a little bit better with Tua. So yeah, perhaps does that give you enough to make you go Julio? I don't know. I'm not sure that I feel enough comfortable in Julio yet this year based on what he's done. Again, Waddle right now is currently wide receiver 26 overall for the season, averaging 13.2. Julio Jones, if I can find him, he's certainly farther down the line because of the time that he missed. He's wide receiver 73, and he's averaging 9.4 in the games that he's played. I don't think I've seen enough from Julio, and I think out of all the guys you mentioned here, I think the only one I consider to make that change with here is Julio. And I do think it's possible that you have higher expectations now because of no Derrick Henry, but at the same time, we haven't really seen it yet. I really can't fault you if you slot in Julio here instead of Waddle, but I think your first instinct here, a lot of times your first instinct is the one you want to roll with. I probably feel the same way about Waddle in this situation as you might. I understand the questioning there, but hope that helps you out, Alexander. Hope that whichever player you go there with, hope they crush it for you. I'm going to look for any follow-ups here from you, and I don't see any. So I do hope that helps you out there, Alexander. Again, I think Brissett is a fine quarterback. I don't think it's a big step down from Tua. JJ Witt is here. JJ, sorry to hear about the is this JJ Witt or JJ Watt? Did we ever figure that out? If it's JJ Watt, really sorry to hear about the injury problems, JJ. But glad to have you with us again. Here on the Fantasy Follow. Looking forward to a big week 9 from you, I'm sure. And you say biggest fantasy matchup you've had in a while. And I'm going to jump around a little bit here. I'm going to hit your follow-ups first. You got Zach Moss, Chase Edmonds, then take the latter of the 2, or Renfro. Thanks. I'm not sure. JJ, hit me up and kind of reinforce for me exactly what you're asking here. I think you're asking which of Zach Moss or Chase Edmonds is the better play. And if I don't think either one of them, if Chase Edmonds is a better option here, or if Hunter Renfro is a better option here. Let's put up some matchups while I wait for your follow-up here. Running back matchups for this week is what we're looking at. And here we go, starting out with Zach Moss, Buffalo against Jacksonville. That is the 1 o'clock game. Jacksonville sits at 13th there on the left side of your screen in terms of fantasy points to the running back spot. I do expect a decent game script day for Buffalo for the run game. I would be surprised if it isn't against Jacksonville. So I think Moss is in the line for some decent work there. Arizona on the road at San Fran, 425. The matchup number for San Fran there is, let's see, where do they fall? 22nd. So the matchup is not quite as good. Also, the Kyler Murray injury plays into this as well, given the fact that Chase Edmonds is the pass catcher out of the backfield there. That might be enough to sway me away from Edmonds with a little bit of uncertainty. Again, I have not seen a report yet on Murray because that's a later game. Trying to keep an eye on these as much as you guys are, I'm sure. Looking on one of my other platforms here, they still do list Kyler Murray as a game time decision. I did see some earlier reports on Twitter and also on some of the shows that I've been watching, trying to keep an eye on those two, Murray and Hawkins. It looks like there's less of a chance that they play this week. I know that I have taken Hawkins out of my own personal lineups. If that's any help to any of you guys that are thinking about some of those similar questions there. And then Hunter Renfrow, the last lead that you're speaking of here. Let's put up the wide receiver numbers. Renfrow has been very consistent this year. This game on the road against the Giants, this is a 1 o'clock game. Fantasy points to wide receivers. The Giants currently sit at, where do they fall here? 11th. So the matchup is pretty decent there. Obviously, there's some more volume to be had in this offense there. I hate to put it in fantasy terms about Henry Ruggs not being there. I'm not even going to put it in those terms because it's not the right way to put it. Just an awful situation, and I don't know what else to say about that. Certainly, we hope for and feel for all the people and the families that were involved in what happened there in Las Vegas. Just really bad. I don't even know what to say there. Obviously, again, hope for all the thoughts to all the families of everybody that was involved in that situation. Don't even want to bring that up in terms of what this is. This is just a game. Renfrow, I think it just to continue on that thought has been very consistent this year. Taking a look at his numbers overall for the season, he is currently wide receiver 36 for the year. So that puts him right on the flex level. He's averaging 12.8. Obviously, they have had their bye already, so that's why he's a little bit lower. But target-wise, if you look at his targets for the entire season and you just read them off, 9, 7, 6, 8, 8, 5, 8. The targets have been there right along. Only 1 week under double digits for fantasy points. So I think that Hunter Renfrow is not necessarily a guy that's giving you a super high ceiling, but you do at least like the floor there for Renfrow. JJ, I think that, you possibly, whether or not this is a PPR league, might make the difference for you here. Let me see your follow-up here. It says, well, you need one back. The second half would be for the flex. Gotcha. So you need two of these players is what you're asking. Now I understand a little bit better. In that aspect, if I was going to, just based on everything that we just said, and assuming that this is a PPR league, because of the uncertainty there with Kyler Murray, I'm going to stray away from Chase Edmonds, and I'm going to say Zach Moss and Hunter Renfrow as these two picks. Again, the Buffalo game is early, so you're going to have to make that decision right ahead, and so is the Vegas game, which kind of leaves you stuck, which kind of means you might have to kind of err on the side of cautiousness in terms of the Murray situation, and I think that does affect Edmonds as well. So I think that Renfrow, you slot him in there, you take that floor, especially when worried about a possible situation where your floor is significantly reduced because of injury concerns there for Arizona. So hope that helps you out there, JJ. That's my thought on those picks, and hope those guys help you out as you go forward. Appreciate you being with us again, JJ. Again, let's take a moment before we get to the rest of these chats here. Let's take a moment to thank all of you that have been with us as regulars. And if any of you are new viewers to the stream, welcome. We want to let you know if you enjoy our content, please feel free to subscribe to the channel or drop us a like or both. The likes and the subscribes really do help out the channel a ton, but also we want to make sure that you get those notifications whenever we have new content, just like Alexander Garcia Osuna did today. Appreciate all of you being here. We're going to promo some of our stuff here before we get to some of our other chats, and then we're going to take a look at the current active, inactive list. So let's start out by doing this. We want to talk about our 6 picks game, and here's the thumbnail for this week. 6 picks for those of you that don't know. Many of you have been playing right along, but perhaps some of you are new. The link is in the description area below. This is the game for you guys to play. There's no cost or anything like that. It's simply a viewer game where you can basically show off your fantasy football skills. You're picking 6 matchups that occur in the 6 games today. The rules are very simple. You'll find those on the video as well, but here they are. 6 fantasy matchups between individual players using PPR scoring. We keep those standings all season long. Those picks are available until 1 o'clock today, so right up until game time of the first games, you can make those picks and show off your fantasy football skills. And taking a look back in Week 8, Cash Money Wilson and Bill Romanowski both led the way with a nice 4-1 record, so a nice week there for Cash Money Wilson and Bill Romanowski. The current leaderboard after 8 weeks, and again, we have this posted right now as a minimum of 2 weeks. That minimum will go up as the season rolls along. But the current leader now is Vansco, who retakes the lead, and you see the numbers there. We're keeping the lead by win percentage, understanding that different players will play different amounts of weeks. So there you see the leaderboard. Vansco in the lead, followed by Michael McFarland and then James Kazi rounding out those players. So take a chance, go over there and get your picks in if you haven't done so yet. And what we will do is we will keep this banner up here as long as it doesn't interfere with any of our other graphics. We will keep that up to let you guys know that the link, as I said, is in the description area below. All right, let's take a look over here at actives and inactives really quick before we get to the rest of our chats to let you guys know where we're at on all the important information here. We'll go through this game by game. We're not going to take a lot of time because we know a lot of you have this information, but want to make sure that we do update for those of you that are looking for this. Cleveland and Cincinnati is the first game. Obviously, Odell Beckham inactive for Cleveland, but no other real names to speak of there, and nothing to speak of on the Cincinnati side of things as well. Denver and Dallas next up. Some issues there in Dallas that we've talked about. CeeDee Lamb in possible injury problems, but he's not listed on the injury report and expected to be a go there. Nobody else for Dallas. On the Denver side of things, no Noah Fant this week due to protocols, but nobody else on the injury report other than that. Houston and Miami. That game, let's see. Houston, Tyrod Taylor is back in at quarterback. No one to really speak of on the injury list there. And then Miami on the other side of things. Again, Devontae Parker is now on IR. Somebody correct me if I'm losing my mind, but I'm pretty sure most of the information I'm recalling off the top of my head is correct there. So that's the situation in that game. Atlanta and New Orleans next up. Atlanta, let's see here. Nothing to really speak of on the Atlanta side of things. And on the New Orleans side of things, Juwan Johnson, tight end, is out. Not a lot else to speak of there. Trevor Siemian, the starter. Obviously, Jameis Winston with that injury last week is Siemian over Taysom Hill, for those of you that didn't get the word on that one yet. Las Vegas and the Giants next up. Las Vegas, let's take a look at what we have there. Nothing really additional on the injury report there. And then for the Giants, Saquon Barkley is out. Sterling Shepard is out. Darius Slayton not listed. Kadarius Toney not listed. So, again, injury problems in New York, but perhaps that is opportunity for Devontae Booker type player or a Toney type player. New England, Carolina. Again, we're just going to go through the 1 o'clock games. New England, N'Keal Harry is on the injury report, not just the report, but on the inactive list. Nobody else to speak of there. Carolina has not listed Christian McCaffrey. He has been activated. I have been trying to see and find any more reports to see. It looks like he is expected to play. He was expected to be a game time decision. This is a tough situation for those of you that have McCaffrey because it does sound like they're going to limit him this week. So especially if you have Chuba Hubbard also on your roster, what do you do here? I'd like to hear all your thoughts on what you guys are planning on doing if you're in that situation. I know for me that I have slotted in McCaffrey where I have both, and I am on the fence with leaving Hubbard in other leagues where I don't have McCaffrey based on, not having better options. It's really a tricky deal there, but nobody else really listed to speak of on that inactive list in that game. Buffalo, Jacksonville. James Robinson is not playing in this game. Jacksonville is inactive. The whole Jacksonville team is inactive. Some might say James Robinson is inactive for this game, as is Jacob Hollister, the tight end there. On the Buffalo side of things, they've got Matt Breida listed as inactive, and obviously Dawson Knox, again, is out for that team. So be aware of that if you've been rolling with Dawson Knox or we're expecting to use him at all. Minnesota, Baltimore, the last of the 1 o'clock games to take a look at here. And on that rundown, we have nothing to speak of for Minnesota. And Baltimore, Sammy Watkins, inactive for this game. Nothing really else to speak of there. As we look on one of our other platforms, in terms of later games, they did list game time decision again as DeAndre Hopkins and Kyler Murray. It does sound like neither one of them are looking good. Not expected to play is Latavius Murray for Baltimore. We already mentioned Noah Fant. And then in terms of players that are ruled out, just to make sure I didn't miss anybody, Calvin Ridley. Obviously, we hope things are okay with Calvin Ridley. Personal reasons, not playing. Damian Williams for Chicago, not playing. So if you're looking for perhaps David Montgomery back from injury, that's a Monday night game. I'm going to refresh this platform and this screen just to make sure that there's nothing that I haven't seen that hasn't changed here. Expected to play, they now have listed as McCaffrey. Also, Rashad Bateman for the Ravens expected to play. CeeDee Lamb and Cooper both expected to play. Beasley expected to play as well. We didn't see him on the inactive list. Going to be interesting to see what happens there if he is a little banged up. Elijah Mitchell looks like he is expected to play as well, as well as Deebo Samuel, Kenny Galladay, A.J. Brown, Robert Woods. Those are the names that we see here. Anybody new on the ruled outside that I haven't talked about yet? Blake Jarwin for Dallas. Perhaps that affects you if you're thinking about playing Dalton Schultz. Also, Eric Ebron ruled out at tight end for Pittsburgh. That might have some impact there on Pat Freiermuth. All right, that's all that information. For those of you that are waiting on chats, we are going to get back to the chats now. We hope all that stuff helped you out. We always want to go through that information because that's obviously very important as you're setting your lineups. We will go back to the chats here, and we will work hard to get all these in before game time. Hopefully, we are on pace to do that this week. And we again, with these chats, I jump around a whole lot. If I miss you, it's not on purpose. If I missed your chat, just say, hey, Joe, you missed mine, and I'll go back and find it. It's certainly not intentional, but it does happen from time to time. But I will look up to see who is next in line, and I believe Jonathan Lee is next in line here. Welcome back, Jonathan Lee, one of our regulars, and here is your chat for today. Pick 3, Deebo, Jamar Chase, Stephon Diggs, Cordell Patterson, or Zach Moss. Let's put up some numbers for you on the left side of your screen to help you out with this information. I have an instinct right away, but we will start with numbers. Deebo Samuel for San Francisco against Arizona, home game, 425. 17th on the left side of your screen is where Arizona falls in terms of fantasy points to the wide receiver spot. Deebo Samuel has been so good this year. I know there's a little bit of injury concern, but he's probably too good to sit down at this point. George Kittle is back this week for San Francisco. That will be something to monitor in terms of how does the volume share change with Kittle back in that lineup. Does Deebo Samuel lose any of that volume? Hard to say, but I think that he's been too good to not play him because of that sort of a situation at this point. I think if you have George Kittle, you play him this week, even though it's the first week back. I know I've done so. That's the whole different story. Jamar Chase, kind of the same line. I think Jamar Chase has been so good. I don't know how you sit him at this point. The matchup there against Cleveland, that's a 1 o'clock game. Cleveland, where do they sit here? 15th, so right in the middle. Not like they're in the red or anything like that. Stephon Diggs for the Bills. I do think this is going to be possibly a more run game script for the Bills unless Jacksonville surprises a little bit. But in terms of matchup numbers to the wide receiver spot, Jacksonville, where do they fall here? 9th. So in the green, a very good matchup there with Cole Beasley a little bit banged up and with Dawson Knox out of the lineup. You have to think the volume, there should not be any volume concerns there when it comes to Stephon Diggs. Cordell Patterson. We switch over to running backs for that one. Obviously, Cordell Patterson has been quite outstanding this year. For Atlanta on the road against New Orleans. Not a good matchup. 4th fewest fantasy points to the running back spot. Is that enough for me to slide in Patterson over any of those other 3 guys? Probably not. Zach Moss, same deal against Jacksonville. Obviously, 13th is where they fall to running backs. Again, I do think that the game script is potentially very good for the Buffalo run game, but still you're splitting with Devin Singletary as always there. So you never feel quite as comfortable about the volume. I don't think there's enough there, in my opinion, to slot either one of those 2, Cordell Patterson or Zach Moss, in over those other guys. I do want to look at Cordell Patterson just to see where he sits on the rundown. He's currently running back 8. I think there may be an argument to be made there that perhaps you want to get one of those running backs into the lineup. If it's any of them, I think that Patterson would be the one. Clearly, his fantasy production has been very good all season long. So again, difficult to sit any of these guys when they've been that good. I hesitate to say it's automatic with Deebo, Jamar, and Diggs, but at the same time, I just feel like it's difficult to sit any one of those guys down. But if you are going to sit one down, I think it's Patterson that you slot in. And who would you slot out if you were going to? This might be one where you want to check your opponent and see who your opponent's playing and find out if there are any similarities. Is your opponent playing Josh Allen? Is your opponent playing Joe Burrow? That might be the reason to make sure and keep those guys in your lineup. If you're projected to win, or if you take a look at the rundown of players and you say, yeah, I like my chances, then you're better off to be sharing a wide receiver with your opponent's quarterback, because it's going to be more difficult for your opponent to make up points on you by doing that. At the same time, if you are down, if you are losing and you need to make a run, it's going to be more difficult for you to make a run if you're sharing a wide receiver with that person's quarterback. So that's why I say check out that matchup, see what's going on there, and make that decision accordingly. And then that would be my reasoning for slotting Patterson over one of those guys. Is there a shared matchup there, and what are you looking to do? Are you favored or are you not favored? And game time wise, San Francisco at 4:00. The other games are 1:00 games, including the Atlanta game, all of them. So you kind of have to make this decision ahead of time, which doesn't help you much there. Sometimes that does help. But I would say that would be my thought here on those different choices there. I think those three receivers are the guys that I would like to go with here. But again, perhaps that there is reason to slide in Patterson if you feel like you need a bigger potential game that doesn't get shared with an opponent in that particular situation. That is a lot of information, Jonathan Lee, but I hope that helps you out. Let me see if there were any follow-ups here. There is one here from you that says, how do we feel about Kirk Cousins? I had to pick him up because Tua is injured. Should I go with Jordan Love or Mayfield or Daniel Jones or Brissett? A lot of different options there. I think that Kirk Cousins is clearly the most proven guy on that list. The most play that you've seen out of any of those. I don't think you go with Baker Mayfield, run first, team. I don't want to roll with Mayfield here. Let's take a look at some matchups here just to help you out. I don't want to just give you, thoughts and nothing else. I would rather give you more data to go on here. The matchup here for Kirk Cousins and Minnesota, that is at Baltimore at 1:00. Baltimore 16th in terms of the matchup, fantasy points to the quarterback spot. So not awful, right in the middle. Jordan Love, I am very hesitant. I think that the best chance here is that Green Bay makes things simple for Love and leans on the run game as much as possible unless they have to turn to the pass. I think that's enough reason to not try to go with Jordan Love here. The matchup-wise against Kansas City obviously is pretty good. Second most fantasy points to the quarterback spot. If this was a situation where you needed a higher ceiling, perhaps. I just don't know if I feel great enough about the first start, for him in order to slot him in. Mayfield, Cleveland against Cincinnati. Where does Cincinnati fall? Let's see here. 17th, so right in the middle. Daniel Jones for the Giants against Las Vegas. Where does Las Vegas fall? 20th, so not any better. And Brissett is a good matchup. He certainly has played already this season. The matchup with Houston, that's a home game at 1:00. Houston, 6th most fantasy points to the quarterback spot. All that being said, the matchup for Minnesota against Baltimore is not awful. It's in the middle of the road. I feel like Cousins is a safer play here than any of the other guys. And certainly Cousins currently at wide receiver 15, averaging 19.9 fantasy points for the season. When you look at that on a game-by-game basis, have there been any stinkers that we're worried about there? Yeah, a couple. 11 in week 4, 14 in week 5, 13 last week against Dallas. Man, you'd like to see a better number than that against Dallas. But he has had some nice games as well. I think that if I was going to go anyway, if you were at all thinking about not going Cousins here, I think the guy that I pick out of the other names we have listed is actually Brissett. Not a lot of great games there. I feel like the matchup is really good, but, as I'm looking at his games throughout the season, 20 in week 3 against Las Vegas, 15 in week 4 against Indy, 16 in week 5 against Tampa Bay. He actually somehow had one fantasy point in week 6 against Jacksonville. I don't believe he played I don't believe he played hardly at all that game. He's 1 for 1, one pass completion. That's good. At any rate, because of the matchup, that would be my only thought as a possibility. But when you look at the numbers, is there enough there to say that I would feel more confident in Brissett over Cousins? No, I don't think so. I think you go with Cousins here. Perhaps in one of these situations, again, where if you have to swing for the fences, it might change your mind. But I think it seems to me that Cousins is the safest play, and that might just be the way you want to go on that. Hope that helps you out there, Jonathan Lee. Whichever guy you go with there, hope they crush it for you. I'm going to see if there are any follow-ups from you here. I don't see any, so I will go back up and start running these down in line. Again, for those of you that are with us on the chat, I try to spend a little bit more time on this information early in this show. So if you got a question, get it in early, because the closer we get to game time, the more rapid fire, the less data there's going to be behind these these picks and these decisions. I do like to give more data because, as I usually like to do, I like to give you information that points you in the right direction rather than just telling you my opinion. Fantasy football is all about opinions, and by no means do I think that I'm the only one out there, so I would much rather be able to talk more through these and give you that data. Thank you, Jonathan Lee, for the chat. Glad to have you back, one of our regulars. Again, if I miss anybody in the chat, just tell me, hey, Joe, I missed you, and I'll get back to you. Not intentional. Bill Romanowski is here, one of our 6 picks players. Good luck today, everyone, Bill says. Let's go. Glad to have you back on the stream, Bill. Greg Chirinkin, one of our regulars, is here. With Tua out now, should I start Jalen Waddle in PPR? My other options are Cole Beasley and Devonta Smith. Let's put up some numbers. Left side of your screen. We talked through this a little bit already. Perhaps you heard the answer to that, Greg, but I will go through this again as well. The matchup there is pretty good for Miami against Houston. Houston sits at 13th. I think if you were comfortable with Waddle before with Tua, I don't feel that there's a huge drop-off from Tua to Jacoby Brissett. I know the targets have been a little bit up and down, a little all over the place. I think that's just the Miami offense to me more than anything. In terms of your other options, I think Cole Beasley is a reasonable option against Jacksonville. Jacksonville, the matchup number is 9 there on the left side of your screen, so the matchup was a little bit better, but I'm a little bit concerned about the fact that Beasley was a little banged up. It does look like he's going to play. And also with Dawson Knox out, I kind of have felt like for Buffalo, the volume is going to go either Knox or Beasley this year. Those are the 2 players that I kind of face off against each other in terms of the games where you've seen Knox have the big fantasy days. Those are the games where we haven't seen it from Beasley. That's kind of where I place that. So without Knox, I think that means that Beasley potentially is in line. Game script, not probably a passing game script for Buffalo this game. So that might be enough reason to kind of the banged up and the game script might be enough to sway from Beasley, even though the matchup is a little bit better. I always talk about these 4 factors: ability, volume, matchup, and game script in that order. Do I feel like Cole Beasley is a tier ahead of Waddle? Not necessarily. I feel like they're kind of in the same range based on their usage. The volume edge, that's a little bit up and down for both players. So the matchup edge does go to Beasley there, but the banged up does not, and the game script does not either. Not that Miami might have a run game script as well against Houston. So a lot of different thoughts here. Devonta Smith for Philadelphia against the Chargers. The Chargers, where they sit second to last in terms of fantasy points allowed to the wide receiver spot. In addition to that, I was high on Devonta Smith starting the year, but I just don't feel like he's kind of panned out as well as would have hoped. That may still turn around before the season is over. But as of right now, I don't know if you feel as confident in him in terms of that fantasy production and also the Philadelphia offense altogether. Not sure how you feel about things that are going on right now there. So all that being said, Greg, I think that this is kind of still the same answer as it was with Alexander. If you were happy with Waddle with Tua in there, I don't know if there's enough with Brissett to make you feel that much differently to start someone else over him. If Beasley hadn't been banged up, check your reports. If you are going to slot anybody else in here, I think it's Beasley. So check your reports. If there's something that I haven't seen in terms of how the Bills feel about Beasley so far today, other than the fact that he is not inactive, then keep an eye on that. But I think it's Waddle. I don't fault you if you decided to slide in Beasley there. I think he's the one that if you were going to go a different direction, I think that's the one you would go towards. But to me, again, I think Waddle probably still just a fine start there for you, Greg. Hope that helps you out. And whichever guy you go with there, hope they crush it for you. We got Pate with us, one of our regulars back with us again. Pate, welcome back to the stream. Higby, Fryermuth, a name that I can't pronounce, or Tan Arnold. Let's see what we can do. I'm going to pull up the tight end list here. I don't even know if I'm missing something, or I'm not even sure on Albert Oak. This is the first time I said this. This is the replacement for Noah Fan. Oakweg. This is clearly the first time I've tried to say this name. I'm going to spell it out. Oakweg Boonham. Oakweg Boonham. Something like that. I'm sure it's not even close. Last week, 6 fantasy points, 3 targets, 3 catches. I'm starting with him because he's the one that I didn't know how to say his name. Let's get the numbers up on the screen to help you out there. Fantasy points to the tight end spot on the left side of your screen here. Starting out with Tyler Higbee for the Rams against Tennessee. Tennessee currently allowing 26th. So that is the 7th fewest fantasy points to the tight end spot. Pat Fryermuth for Pittsburgh perhaps has the hot hand here. Home against Chicago. I don't know how high a scoring game this is going to be, which limits your fantasy points that are available to you there. Chicago sits at, where do they fall? Second to last. Ooh, not good there. Eric Ebron being inactive for that game. Why do we know already that Eric Ebron is inactive for that game? He's not listed on the inactive list. I want to say that is on one of the other platforms. Yes, he's been ruled out. So that must be off of the injury report. At any rate, you would think that bodes well for a little bit more volume for Freiermuth. Again, a nice week last week. I'm going to call up Freiermuth's stats for comparison here. Let's see. Here they are. Last week, 7 targets, 4 catches. The week before that, 7 targets, 7 catches. Double digits each of the last 2 weeks, and touchdown only in one of those 2. Dan Arnold is the last guy that you list off here for Jacksonville against Buffalo. And Buffalo, where do they fall? Let's see here. 25th. None of these are great matchups here. That is the 8th fewest fantasy points to the tight end spot. I got to think that, to me, Higbee is the safer play of all these guys. But if you're not looking for a safe play, I don't know how high Higbee's ceiling is. I'm not sure that he's had reasonable floor games, but we haven't seen big games from him. I think if you're looking for more of a ceiling play, it's Freiermuth because of the fact of no Ebron and the fact that he's the hot hand. If you're looking more of a floor play because of the fact that Chicago-Pittsburgh game, I think a lot of people feel is going to be a low-scoring game, less potential for fantasy points overall, then that might lean you towards Higbee. I think the other 2, we take them both out of the equation, although Dan Arnold, I think, has been okay for Jacksonville. I think there's a chance they have to throw the ball a little bit in this game. I just don't know if there's enough there to point me in that direction. Let me look at Dan Arnold's stats again really quick. Currently tight end 23, averaging 7.2 fantasy points. Did have 15 last week against Seattle. Double digits in 2 out of the last 3, but those are the only 2 all year he's been in double digits. So I think Arnold is not all that much different from Freiermuth in terms of his recent play, and I probably favor Freiermuth a little bit more there of the 2, even though the matchup is not that great. I think Higbee is who I would lean to. I probably would feel like I want to get a safer play out of the tight end spot because it's such a hard, tight end is difficult to get consistent play from here. So I think Higbee is the guy that I go with here, Pate. I don't fault you if you go another way. If you did, I think Freiermuth might be the guy I lean on because of the fact he's got the hot hand there. Hope that helps you out there, Pate, and hope that points you in a direction that works out best for you. And as I always say, whichever guy you pick there, hope that they do crush it for you. Let me see if there are any follow-ups here from you, Pate, and I don't see any, so I will move on to the next one. All right, next up in line. Again, if I miss anybody, just let me know. Hey, Joe, you missed me. It's not intentional, but sometimes it happens because I do skip around here from time to time. Ethan Hartman is with us today. Pick 2 players in PPR: Jarvis Landry, Devonta Smith, Julio Jones, and Jacoby Myers. I think some matchup numbers will help us out here. Left side of your screen, fantasy points to the wide receiver spot. Starting with the order that you gave us, Cleveland against Cincinnati on the road, 1 o'clock today. Cincinnati at number 12 in terms of fantasy points to the wide receiver spot. It does seem like Landry, if anybody has been a guy in this run-first offense that has seemed to be the guy that Baker Mayfield likes to look to, it does seem like it's Landry. He currently falls. Where does he fall on the rundown of players here? Come on, Jamar. Currently wide receiver 80, of course, missed some time, and he's averaging 10 points a game at this point. And as you look at his numbers game by game, in the last 2 games, 8 targets in week 7, 10 targets in week 8, 5 catches in both of those games, and 9 fantasy points and 10 in the other. Am I looking on PPR? I am. So I think that's a reasonable start here. Devonta Smith, we talked about a little bit already for Pittsburgh in the matchup here against the Chargers. LA Chargers, second to fewest fantasy points to the wide receiver spot. Not a great matchup here. I might sway away from Devonta Smith. Julio Jones, I think there's some argument to be made here with no Derrick Henry that Julio Jones should be more involved. We just haven't seen it yet. Tennessee at the Rams. Sunday Night Football, the LA Rams. The matchup here is 18, so right in the middle, not terrible. And then Jacoby Myers for New England against Carolina. Where does Carolina fall? 28th, 5th fewest. So again, the matchup number is not as good there for Myers. What they've done overall for the season, you might feel a little bit better about Myers than Julio because you expect Myers to be the number 1 target there. Currently wide receiver 30, averaging 11.7. Julio Jones currently, and these are not, again, when I talk about these numbers, I'm not talking about rankings like projections type. I'm talking about where they rank overall in fantasy points for the year. That's how I'm basing this here. Julio currently wide receiver 73, averaging 9.4. So the average is not a whole lot worse. Only a couple points than Myers. The matchup should be a little bit better. Again, game script wise, does New England run the ball more against Carolina? Hard to say. Does Tennessee have to throw the ball against the Rams? Possibly in a higher scoring game. I think of all these guys, Landry, I think, is clear cut above the other ones. As I'm talking through this, I think my lean is towards Julio Jones here. But I think if it wasn't Jones, it's Myers. So if I'm going to rank them, let's do this. Let's rank these guys in the order that I'm looking at based on all the information I've just given you. Landry 1, Jones 2, Myers 3, Smith 4, and perhaps you swap Myers and Jones based on how you feel about that. But hopefully that's enough information to point you in the direction that you feel is best for you, Ethan, and whichever guys you go with there, I hope that they crush it for you. Looking for follow-ups from you, and I don't see any, so I will move on. Thank you, Ethan, for the chat. Glad to have you back with us. Alexander Garcia Osuna says, thanks, I appreciate it. Going to roll with Waddle. Good luck. Hope it works out for you. And as I always say, when you guys say thanks, I always say thanks right back because you guys being on the chat is what really makes the show. We appreciate having you guys with us. And obviously, as I said before, as a growing channel, all of you that have subscribed to the channel and all of you that feel free to drop us a like, those likes and the subscribes, they really do help out the channel a ton. So I always want to thank you guys for being with us. Next up with us is Trimsy. Trimsy back with us, one of our regulars. Hopefully all of your chats. I know there was a little bit of an issue on a previous stream, Trimsy, with some of your chats not showing up. So hopefully everything is showing up for you today. And let's take a look at what we have here for you. Pick 2, Christian McCaffrey, Joe Mixon, Devontae Booker, Zach Moss, and Chuba Hubbard. A good spot to be in here. It seems like you got some good choices to make here. The worst of these choices is the McCaffrey choice. I don't know. This is a purely instinct choice, and I think it's going to be different for all of you if you are in this situation. I have gone back and forth. I think that if you have Christian McCaffrey, I don't know how you don't play him. I don't know how you justify playing Chuba Hubbard over McCaffrey. It does sound like McCaffrey is going to be somewhat limited in terms of not a full snap count. So I don't know how that's enough to play Hubbard over him. And at the same time, I don't know how, this would have to be, if you're not going to play McCaffrey, it would have to be for one of these other guys, basically. I don't think you can sit McCaffrey for Hubbard. We'll address the situation with others of you if you only have one of them. But if you have both, I think if you're going to play a Carolina player, I think it has to be McCaffrey here. The matchup number against New England, where do they fall? 18th, right in the middle in terms of fantasy points to the running back spot. I don't know. This is a tough one. I don't really even know how to come up with it. Given the fact that I've had a difficult time answering this question for myself, I think it's equally as difficult to answer this question for you guys. Let's look at the other guys in this group that you've given me here. Cincinnati home against Cleveland for Joe Mixon. Cleveland, where do they fall? 28th, so that is the 5th fewest fantasy points to the running back spot. Certainly you feel better about the volume. This is why I always talk about those 4 factors: ability, volume, matchup, and game script in that order. Volume over matchup. If Mixon, you have to expect, is going to get more volume than CMC, even though CMC, man, I guess I go against my own rules because I say ability. I think CMC is the highest tier player you can get, clearly. He's the number 1 pick. But I'm very hesitant about what they decide to give him this week. I can't imagine when they've already tried to bring him back and then had to place him on IR. I can't see how they're going to give him a full workload. I just think if you have a better option here, that might be where you have to look. And Mixon probably does slot ahead of him in looking at it that way, even though the matchup is bad. Just a gross situation. Devontae Booker for the Giants against Las Vegas. Las Vegas, where do they fall? 10th on the list there in terms of fantasy points to the running back spot with no Saquon Barkley. Devontae Booker expected to get all the work. You hear the hesitation in my voice here because I can't believe that I'm going to say that you should play Devontae Booker over Christian McCaffrey. I can't believe those words are ever going to come out of my mouth, but I think that they are, believe it or not. Booker, what he's done in recent games, in the last 4 games, all of them in double digits, fantasy points, 21, 11, 15, and 8. His rushing, in terms of his usage, has been there, steady 16, 12, 14, and 15 rushes right along the way. His targets have been there, 4, 4, 3, and 6 right along the way. Believe it or not, I have to think Devontae Booker is actually a safer play here than Christian McCaffrey or Chuba Hubbard. So if I'm only picking 2, we talked about Zach Moss a little bit earlier. I will still talk about his matchup here because I do think the game script is in Buffalo's favor for the run game. Jacksonville sits at 13th on the left side of your screen there in terms of the matchup. It's a better matchup than Mixon, but do I feel like I can slot Moss in over a Mixon? No, because of the volume splitting with Devin Singletary always. So I think you have to take the volume in this situation. So let's put it this way. If you are of the type player here who feels like they absolutely want to play Christian McCaffrey because he's back, then you slot him in, and your second slot is probably Devontae Booker because the matchup is better than Mixon, and I think the volume is going to be pretty equal between the two. Mixon, I clearly think, is a higher tier player, but that's partly because of Booker is only a backup, and we've seen him play pretty well. I think it's close between Mixon and Booker. I think it's close between Mixon and Booker. If you're of the thinking that you want to be away from Christian McCaffrey this week because of the pitch count, then I think Mixon and Booker are your clear choices here because I don't think you can take Hubbard over CMC. He's not going to get a full game's worth of work either, and neither is Moss. So in this situation, you go with the volume, and I think if it were me, I probably would go with the volume either way. I probably would go Mixon and Booker. And just simply wait and see with Christian McCaffrey. Obviously, you never know what's going to happen. Is he fully healthy? Or is there going to be a setback? You never know. There are so many question marks there. Next week, you know more about where he's at and you feel better about McCaffrey. This isn't probably a choice at all for you anymore. But in this particular week, I think to me, Mixon and Booker. And if you do want to get CMC in there, then I think you probably keep Booker over Mixon because of the matchup. Hope that helps you out there, Trimsy. A lot of information here. I'm going to hit your follow-up next before I go to the next one here as I jump around a little bit. Pick 3, Beasley. Sanders, I'm going to assume, is Emmanuel. Ben Jefferson, DeAndre Hopkins, I think he is out, and Jacoby Myers. I'll say this about DeAndre Hopkins. I've heard enough reports that they don't feel like they're going to play, that even though they haven't released that information, I'm straying away from Hopkins for my own leagues. I think that's a reasonable way to go as long as you have somebody that's worthy that you can slot in his place. And let's see if we do have that by taking a look at these numbers. Cole Beasley against Jacksonville. Number 9 on the left side of your screen in terms of fantasy points to the wide receiver spot. Again, no Dawson Knox there. I think that is potential there. If this is Emmanuel Sanders that you're talking about, I'm assuming that it is. Who other Sanders would it be for Washington? At any rate, Emmanuel Sanders, I think of the two between Beasley and Sanders, I think I would favor Sanders more if you're going to pick one of these two. And if you want to diversify and you only want to pick one, I would think Sanders is the one that you would pick here simply because of the fact that Beasley has been a little bit banged up. And Sanders has played very well and been more consistent than Beasley has throughout the season, even when Beasley was healthy. Currently sits at, where does Emmanuel Sanders sit? Currently wide receiver 35 and much farther down the list for Cole Beasley, currently at, is he way down the list or did I just miss him? Well, at any rate, I'm sure he's not ahead of Sanders. There he is, 34. He is ahead of Sanders by one spot. See, now this is why I look at things because I'm like, I'm sure he's not ahead of Sanders. And there he is ahead of Sanders. Last week, 13 targets for Beasley. Against Miami, 10 catches, 21 fantasy points. The week before the bye week against Tennessee, 9 targets, 7 catches, 22 fantasy points in that game. And Emmanuel Sanders, how does he compare? Let's see. The last against Miami, 4 targets, no catches. 0. Not ever good when you put up a 0 burger. Before that, he was very consistent, and that would be the reason why Cole Beasley is currently ahead of Emmanuel Sanders. Did Sanders leave that game with an injury? I don't remember. I'm not sure that I know the answer to that question. Let's look at the overview. Does not say that there is any injury concerns here. Man, it's you never want to look backwards. You always want to look forward. I feel that Sanders overall is the player that you trust more between Sanders and Beasley was banged up. Tough when you look at a 0 the week before. That's a tough one to look at, but I still think I would probably trust Sanders there more of the two, and perhaps this is going to be where you pick both of them anyway. I don't know if there's enough game script to warrant that. Van Jefferson for the Rams. Tricky one to me. Tennessee, where's the matchup here? Number 1 in terms of fantasy points to wide receivers. Of course, Cooper Kupp. Of course, Robert Woods. Van Jefferson has been reasonably okay, currently at wide receiver 41. I certainly think he is a flex, at best here. But the fantasy points the last 2 weeks have been there. Last 2 weeks, 14 and 12, 7 targets and 6 targets in each of those last 2 weeks. I think there is some thought here because of that matchup. And then Jacoby Myers for New England, as we talked about, against Carolina. I also went with the Canadian pronunciation there. Let's see, Jacoby Myers for New England. Carolina sits at 28, so the 5th fewest. Probably enough of a bad matchup there to sway away from that direction. So let's put it this way. I'm going to consider Hawkins out. I'm going to take him out of this equation. I'm going to order the rest of these guys in terms of where I think that they are. I think Sanders 1. I think Beasley 2. And I think Jefferson, I'm going to say Jefferson is 2A. I'm not even going to put him at 3rd. And here's the reason why. I think that if it's in your interest to diversify and not go with both Bills, I think you play Van Jefferson here. And then I think you pick whichever one of those 2 Bills you feel more comfortable with. To me, it's probably Sanders because of the injury concern to Beasley. That would be my thoughts there. I think either one of them could have nice games, and I think either one of them could fall victim to the game script against Jacksonville, but the matchup is good, so I think slotting in one of them is very reasonable here. So to me, it's Sanders and Jefferson. But again, I give you enough information and can't fault you if you went a different direction based on that information. Hope that helps you out there, Trimsy. And any other follow-ups from you here as well, I don't see them. So hope whichever guys you pick there, Trimsy, I hope they crush it for you. And obviously, good luck in going out and get that W as usual. Where are we in terms of game time? We're 20 minutes to game time, so still reasonable to get some information for you guys. But at some point, we will move into rapid-fire mode here. Lucius Varenas 44 is one of our regulars. Welcome back, Lucius Varenas 44. You say, I need 1 wide receiver, 1 running back, and 1 flex, half PPR. And here are the options. Josh Jacobs, Hunter Renfrow, Eli Mitchell, Darrell Williams, James Robinson. James Robinson is out. Julio Jones, Kadarius Toney, or Boston Scott. Tight matchup. Let's do our best to see if we can help you through this one. Let's take a look at fantasy points being allowed here. I think if you're talking 1 running back here between Mitchell and Jacobs, those are the options. I'm going to take Darrell Williams out of the equation because I know he's been okay, but I don't think I pick him over either Jacobs or Mitchell here. And I don't think I pick Boston Scott over those guys either because there's too many question marks in Philadelphia in terms of who's going to get that volume, Scott, Gainwell, and the like. So I think for me, the 1 running back is between Jacobs and Mitchell has some injury concerns. And I'm looking on my other platform to see what they expect from him. He is in the expected to play column on the platform that I'm looking at. Obviously, that is a late game, so we really don't know for sure. Jacobs is an early game. You're going to have to make that decision beforehand. And another factor here, Jeff Wilson is back for the 49ers this week. And we know that there are Shanahanigans all the time in San Francisco. So if Eli Mitchell is at all banged up, and if they are comfortable with Jeff Wilson, could they all of a sudden slot in Jeff Wilson and all of a sudden for those of us, which includes me, who are playing Eli Mitchell, sitting here like, what? Like, it's happened before. You have to take that into consideration when you make these choices. And so far, San Francisco hasn't had much choice. It's been Mitchell and pretty much nobody else because they haven't wanted to play Trey Sermon at all, it seems. Now they have choices. So now you're back to this, oh no, what's going to happen? And you're sitting there like, I really hope that they play the guy that I need them to play. So that being said, that puts me on Josh Jacobs. The matchup here, Vegas against the Giants, 11th in terms of fantasy points allowed to the running back spot. If I compare that to San Francisco against Arizona, Arizona sits at 26, which is 7th fewest. So the matchup is better for Jacobs anyway. I think I slide in Josh Jacobs as that 1 running back there. If James Robinson was healthy, it might not be that. But since he is not, again, Jacobs currently sits at running back 28, has missed some time. He's averaging 15.1. So if you did it by average, he would be much higher than that. I'm gonna pick Josh Jacobs first there. Then if we move to the wide receivers next, put up wide receiver numbers. We talked about Hunter Renfrow a little bit already. I think Hunter Renfrow gives you a nice floor in any of these situations. The matchup here for Vegas against the Giants, fantasy points to the wide receivers on the left side of your screen. Giants in 11th. So the matchup is not terrible for Renfrow. Then you've got Julio Jones. I want to say this is the exact same situation that we might have already talked about. Jones for Tennessee against the Rams. The Rams matchup is 18th, so not quite as good of a matchup. I think Julio Jones gives you a little bit higher ceiling than Renfrow, but a little bit lower floor. If this is a tight matchup, let's continue on before we figure out what we want to do here. Kadarius Toney for the Giants. No Sterling Shepard, no Saquon Barkley. Check on your reports because I haven't checked on specific reports to Tony, but I'm assuming he's fully healthy. You have to think that this is a reasonably decent thought, at least, against Las Vegas. Where do they slot in fantasy points to the wide receiver spot? Fourth fewest, 29th. Yuck. This is the tougher choice so far of everything that I see here. Which one of these guys do you want to play? I would check your opponent to see who they're playing for their quarterback. Is there any reason why perhaps they're playing a Ryan Tannehill? Perhaps they're playing a Derek Carr. Most weeks you might not say that, but there are injuries and bye weeks to deal with, so they could be playing those players. Again, I talk about if you are projected to win or if you feel good. I know you said it's a tight matchup. It's going to be tougher if you're sharing the quarterback. If you're sharing your receiver with their quarterback, it's going to be tougher for that person to make up points or beat you based on their quarterback if you have that wide receiver. So in a tight matchup, I think that might be the way to go. If that were the situation, I would pick whichever one of those guys that you share, Renfrow or Jones, because of the fact that I think they're pretty close. I think Renfrow gives you the safer floor. I think Jones potentially gives you the higher ceiling. That's the way I would look at that. So I'm not even gonna per se give you a choice. I'm gonna leave that up to you and feel like what you feel like you need. If you feel like you need the ceiling because it's a tight matchup, then I think Jones is it. If you feel like you need the floor because it's a tight matchup, then I think it's Renfrow is it. I'm not comfortable with Julio Jones yet in that offense until we see him put up a nice game. Just not comfortable yet. That's why I go that way. So I think if it were going to be, if you take everything out of the equation, I probably want to take Renfrow there of those two. If I were going to go that direction, again, the matchup is slightly better. 11th against the Rams, 18th, slightly better matchup for Renfrow. That would be my thoughts there. And then for your flex, do I feel like Tony is ahead of Julio Jones? Do I feel like Mitchell is ahead of either of these guys? I think it's I feel like I want to say Tony here because there's so many injury concerns with the Giants. The matchup is really bad though against the Raiders. Man, Tony has played pretty well when he's had opportunities. He's seen a pretty good amount of volume when, with other players out to injury. With Sterling Shepard out, that seems like he would be the guy. He's only had that one really big week of targets in week 5, where he had 13 targets. The other ones, the previous 2 weeks after that, 3 and 5. Man, I wish there was more to go with than Tony. I don't think there's enough to go with there to make me feel comfortable. I think there's a nice ceiling there, but again, I don't know the floor is very good. I think out of all these guys for your flex, I like to have a running back in the flex. I might pick Eli Mitchell in this situation. And let me go back to the numbers just to make sure that I'm not giving you bad information based on the matchup. But San Francisco against Arizona. Arizona sits at 26. Not a great matchup there. If you can, Boston Scott is a better matchup for Philly. Man, this is a really, Lucius, you got a lot of tough choices here. I don't envy your situation here. I hope that this information is helping you get the guys that you feel best about going with. Philadelphia home against the Chargers. LA Chargers sit at 5th most fantasy points to the running back spot. Man, I probably, for everything that we've talked through here, I might go with Boston Scott because of that matchup. What's the matchup look like for Kansas City against Green Bay? Where does Green Bay sit on this list? 17th, midway point, in terms of Darrell Williams. I think Darrell Williams, you might feel better about the volume. I'm hesitant on Mitchell, but Mitchell has played well. If you're not concerned about the injury to Mitchell, and if you're not concerned about Jeff Wilson and Shanahanigans, then I think my choice here based on volume is Mitchell. But the potential for the best game here, I think, is Boston Scott. And did you see enough last week from Boston Scott to feel comfortable in the amount of volume that Philadelphia gives him over a Kenneth Gainwell? Perhaps you did, perhaps you didn't. I'm going to leave that up to you. I'm going to hope that the information gives you enough to make that choice. To me, all other things taken away from consideration, if there's no worries about injuries, if there's no worries about Jeff Wilson, I think that Eli Mitchell would be the guy I would pick as your flex. However, I've given you all that information and reasons why you decide to go away from that. Half-point PPR, if it were full, it might be a Jones or a Tony, but because it's half, I'm going to say Scott is the guy if you're hesitant on Mitchell. And boy, oh boy, Lucius, I hope that information helps you. And I will be watching my games because I hope that all the stuff and all the information that we went through, as much as I'll say this, as much as I do this with my own lineups, I do watch these games and I do think back to, different choices you guys have put up there. And I always hope that the information that we put out helps you get the guys that end up playing the best. So hope whichever guy you go there, hope they crush it. Sorry for so many questions. No problem. Dak or Burrow with Tua out, pivot out of Gesicki for Conklin. Thanks in advance. I think if you were going to go with Gesicki over Conklin, he was targeted heavily with Jacoby Brissett in the lineup. I don't think there's enough reason to switch you there. That being said, I like the matchup for Conklin also, so I don't think it's a horrible thought here. But I think if you already decided on Gesicki, I don't think that there's I don't think Jacoby Brissett is enough of a downgrade to move away from what you were already going to go with. And Dak or Burrow, we'll put up the matchups here, but I think it's got to be Dak. If he's playing, I think you have to play Dak here. Don't get me wrong, I like Joe Burrow a whole lot. Fantasy points allowed to the quarterback spot. Cleveland, they sit at 8th, so it is a good matchup there. And then Dallas, let's see, against Denver. Denver sits at, 30th, third fewest. I guess there is some argument there to play Burrow, but in terms of, we go back to those things that I always talk about, ability, volume, matchup, game script, I just put Dak at a higher tier than Joe Burrow. I think when you have a higher tier player, more often than not, they're going to have the ability to overcome matchups that aren't as good. I like Joe Burrow a whole lot, but I think Dak is probably the guy that you have to go with. Keep an eye on your reports just in case we hear something that they're still hesitant on Dak. I could see, again, if you need the swing for the fences play, the matchup favors Burrow there. I could see it. But if it were me, I'd probably go Dak. If you have Dak and Joe Burrow, I think, Lucius, for looking ahead, not that this is a question that you asked, but looking ahead, I think there are enough injuries out there right now among quarterbacks that you should be looking to one of these teams and trying to offer a trade, like a 2-for-1 deal by putting Burrow with somebody else and getting an upgrade at whatever position that you want to get as a result. That would be what I would look to do there because you're going to be faced with the same decision with Dak and Burrow, where both are very good choices. And either one of those players has a ton of value to another team in your league. So I think you could spin that into a better player at another position. That would be my thought here, Lucius, that you could look at here just in terms of looking ahead. Hope that helps you out there, Lucius. Man, I know you said tight matchup. I hope you get that W. And I certainly hope that the information that we gave you puts you in the right direction of players that end up getting that W for you. Good luck. And thank you again for being on the stream. We are about 10 minutes to game time, so we're not in full no huddle mode, I guess is the way he could put it here. Hurry up offense. But we're getting close. Chip Douglas, welcome back. Chip, one of our regulars. Flex PPR, Tony Pollard, Rashad Bateman, Peterson, Montgomery if he plays. I would want it to be Montgomery, but it doesn't, he's a Monday night game. So I don't know how we're going to make that decision for Montgomery because clearly he's going to be the volume of all these guys. He would be the guy that could potentially have the most. Unless they put him on a pitch count, which I don't know how to put that. Chicago, Pittsburgh on the left side of your screen. Fantasy points allowed to the running back spot. Where do they sit? 27th, 6th fewest. Not a great matchup. Tony Pollard for Dallas. Obviously, you're not going to expect a ton of volume there, but you might be able to get enough against Denver. They fall at, where are they? 21st. Not a great matchup. Rashad Bateman for Baltimore against Minnesota. Put up the wide receiver numbers for that. Minnesota sits at 6th. And Adrian Peterson, again, we'll put up these numbers. Tennessee against the Rams. The Rams sit at 15. I don't feel like I trust Peterson in his first week with the team, not because of the ability, but just because I feel like they are not going to give him all of the work. I think it's going to be pretty even split with McNichols. So therefore, volume-wise, I don't know if it's going to be there. The fact that it's his PPR and the fact that Rashad Bateman is listed as healthy at this point. I know there were some concerns with his injury status. I think that Rashad Bateman is my choice here. That gets you to your flex value. And I also think it is the best matchup out of everything, all the numbers that we looked at there. I think that's enough to put you in that direction. If we knew more about Montgomery, I could potentially go the other way. But because we don't know enough, I think you're safer here. And also the fact that it's PPR, I think Bateman in that offense in Baltimore is continuing along at a nice pace. And I think you look for that to continue this week. Also, no Sammy Watkins for Baltimore. All that being said, Chip, My pick here is going to be Rashad Bateman. Hope whichever guy you go with there, I hope that they do crush it for you. Los Vods is up next. Welcome back, Los Vods. I'm pretty desperate this week. Should I flex Myers, Javonte Williams, A.J. Dillon, or Carlos Hyde? Instinct here tells me, again, I'm going to start moving a little closer because we're about 8 minutes to game time. Instinct tells me Myers is the safest of these guys. You expect him to be the number one guy there in terms of pass catchers for New England. The matchup with Carolina, not great, 5th fewest. Javonte Williams, obviously splitting time with Gordon for Denver. The matchup with Dallas on the left side of your screen. Dallas falls at 25, so the matchup is not any better. I think A.J. Dillon is worth some consideration there because you would think that Green Bay will run the ball a little bit more, and Dillon has been getting more play as of recent. Where is the matchup? Kansas City in terms of points to the running back spot, 14th. The matchup is not bad there. Carlos Hyde, you expect to get all the volume for Jacksonville with no James Robinson. However, Buffalo is allowing, as you see, number 32, the very fewest fantasy points to the wide receiver spot. So therefore, volume over matchup. Carlos Hyde is the thought if you're going to pick one of those running backs. I think I pick Hyde, but I don't think any one of these running backs is enough to sway off of Myers at this point. I'm going to assume this is PPR, Los Vods. I think that's the safest play. I think it's possible these other guys could all have nice games, but I don't know how comfortable you are with any of them. And Myers, let me just look to make sure that he hasn't put up any stinkers lately, because that will help just to make sure that I'm not missing something. I don't want to put you in a bad spot here by swaying you the wrong way. Myers, nope, only 1 game, 2 games under double digits. He's been pretty consistent all year long. So the floor seems like would be okay. I'm going to stay on the safe side of this choice here, and I'm going to say Jacoby Myers is the one that I picked there. Whichever guy you pick there, hope that guy crushes it for you, Los Vods, and hope that information helps you out. Starting to be hurry up mode here. Ash, let me see if I get this right. I'm going to slow down. Abhishek Kundalia. Tell me Abhishek Kundalia if I got that right. I really do try to get these names right, and I hope it looks like you might be a new viewer, so glad to have you. Welcome to the stream. If you're not new and I'm losing my mind, then welcome back. Either way, glad to have you. Sutton, Landry, Cooper, Tony, Bateman, Myers, or Marvin Jones. Pick 3. Numbers to help us out here. Instinct says Cooper has to be in there. Instinct says Landry has to be in there. Then it's a pick for the other spot, I think. Starting out with Cortland Sutton, Denver against Dallas. The fantasy points there, Dallas 7th most of the wide receiver spot. I think it's going to be hard-pressed for me to pick another guy over Sutton. We've already talked about Tony. The matchup is not good. We've talked about Myers as a reasonably safe play, but the matchup is not as good. And Marvin Jones, again, the matchup not good. The fewest fantasy points to the wide receiver spot. We talked about Tony. Hasn't really been enough consistent volume there despite the injuries. I think you have to lean on the guys here that you have the highest expectations overall for. I think that's Sutton, Landry, Cooper for you. Abhishek. Man, I'm really trying. I really want to get that name right. Abhishek Kundalia. I think I might have the last name correct, hopefully. Hope that helps you out there. Sutton, Landry, Cooper are my thoughts here, and whichever guys you go with there, hope that they crush it for you. I'm looking to see if there are any follow-ups to see if I actually said your name right. I don't see it, so I'm going to hope that I did. Good luck to you there. Next up, Christian Espinosa. We're going to get a little bit rapid fire. 5 minutes to game time. Cortland Sutton or Emmanuel Sanders. Matchup numbers. Sutton, we just talked about. Matchup is 7th. Emmanuel Sanders, Jacksonville is 9th. I'm going to say Cortland Sutton here because you expect Sutton to be the main guy in that pass-catching core for Denver on most weeks. I want to look at his numbers really quick. If I have him here, I don't know if I do. Cortland Sutton currently wide receiver 23. Sanders is down there at 35. We saw Sanders have the big goose egg last week. No idea why that was. Sutton only had 6 fantasy points last week. But I think overall, I think your higher ceiling is Sutton, and I don't think the floor is much lower. So I'm going to pick Sutton of these two. Hope that helps you out there, Christian. Let's see who's next up in line. Starting to go rapid fire mode. A. Aladdin, one of our regulars. Welcome back, A. Aladdin. Start 2, half-point PPR. Boston Scott, Cortland Sutton, Jeremy McNichols, Adrian Peterson. You're not going to start McNichols and Peterson. So are you going to start McNichols over Scott or Sutton? We talked about the matchup for Scott already. Philadelphia playing up against, who did I say Philadelphia's playing up against here? The matchup number. LA Chargers. LA Chargers at 5th most fantasy points to the running back spot. I think you take Scott over McNichols and Peterson. And I think you take Sutton as your other player there. Hope that helps you out there. A. Aladdin. Next up, rapid fire mode. Nick Hobie. Welcome to the stream, Nick Hobie. I think you might be a new viewer. Welcome. Glad to have you. Is Hunter Henry or Pat Freiermuth? Matchup numbers. Hunter Henry for New England. playing against Carolina. Carolina, where they sit, fantasy points to the tight end spot, 19th. Pat Freiermuth for Pittsburgh against Chicago. Chicago 31. I think this is very close, but I'm going to simply trust the guy that I trust overall more for the season. That's Hunter Henry in this one. I know Fireman has been playing well, but I'm still going to stick with the guy that I overall trust more, Hunter Henry. Hope that helps you out there. Nick, next up, Alex R. Emmanuel Sanders or Christian Kirk. I'm going to take Emmanuel Sanders over Christian Kirk. Again, this is an instinct. As we get into rapid fire mode, these answers are going to be more instinct than not. Let me see if I can get numbers up really quick. Arizona numbers against San Fran. Where does San Fran fall? 25th. So the matchup is no good. Jacksonville 9th. Matchup better for Sanders. I would like Sanders better overall anyways for the season. Emmanuel Sanders is my pick there. Thank you, Alex R. Thank you, our new viewer. Welcome to the stream. XXX Lex, return viewer. Judy Waddle, Gainwell, Pollard, D. Smith. This is the fastest I think I've ever talked on one of these. Ertz, Higgins, Dearness Johnson need 2 for flex PPR. I'm going to pick Waddle, and T. Higgins is too good of a player to sit on your bench here. I know he's not the main guy there, but despite the matchup, I'm not even going to look at. I want to look at the matchup. Cleveland, where do they fall in terms of fantasy points to wide receivers? 15th, not a bad matchup. I'm taking T. Higgins. I simply don't want to sit T. Higgins on the bench there out of these players. PPR, especially, you get in the PPR value there. Thank you, Lex. Chase Wellner. I'm going to try to get all these chats before game time. Boy, there are a lot. This is rapid fire rest of the way. PPR, Patterson, A.J. Brown, or Debo, sit 1. Last 2 are hurt. I sit Cordell Patterson here. I roll with, unless you hear otherwise from your notifications, I roll with Brown and Debo. I think they're too good to sit on your bench for Patterson, although Patterson has played well. If you're going to sit 1, I think you sit Debo. I think you got to have Brown in there. Clapnuts, start Ayuk or Beasley, full PPR. Worry Beasley will be limited. A game script worries me as well. I have not seen enough from Brandon Ayuk to trust him here. We got George Kittle returning, so less volume. I'm still going to go with Beasley despite those concerns. I think my concerns are equally as well about Ayuk's usage in that offense as they would be about Beasley's injuries. Vansco, it's Tony time. Is about to win my league. Coming in to replace Hopkins. Good luck to you there, Vansco. Lemonhead Husey, new viewer, I believe. Welcome. Kadarius Tony, Cole Beasley, Hunter Redford, or DJ Moore. Got to start 2. Beasley and Moore is too high of a tier player to sit. Carolina against New England, 14th. I got to play DJ Moore. I know he hasn't played as well. I got to play DJ Moore in that situation. Hope that helps you out there. Again, I wish I could give you more information, but we are going rapid fire to try to get everybody in. Duolingo 500, Carlos Hyde or Devin Singletary, Hyde volume. Lemonhead Husey, AP or Devontae Freeman. AP. I don't love Freeman here. Romanowski smashed the like. Thank you, Bill. Connor LaRose, Gaskin, Damian Harris, or Darrell Williams, PPR. Gaskin and Harris are my picks here. Vansco, rolling with Gaskin in a flex, first time since 3-carry game. If he fails me, I might quit fantasy forever. Let me try to get the rest of these. Albert O, LOL. Let's see here. Who is next here? Give me one flex PPR from TS. Julio, Sanders, or Gordon. I'm going to take Sanders here because of the matchup. Romanowski, Mitchell. Let's see who else is next here. Joey Perps, Landry, Sutton, Debo, Hardman, pick 2. Got to start Debo even with the injury. I'm going to pick Landry next here because of the volume. Bars in the tuck. Rank these as full PPR stash going forward. I'm going to get back to this one. I'm going to hit the other questions here first. Cole Ward, full PPR. I know we're close to game time. Higbee or Ertz? I think Higbee. I don't trust Ertz enough yet, especially with Murray out. Also, do you think starting CMC over Eli Mitchell is a smart move? Probably have to do that here. Let's see. Who else did I miss? Derek Carr, hope for Kyler Murray. I probably stay away from Murray because the reports say that he's not going to play. Eli Mitchell or Melvin Gordon. I think I stay with Mitchell there. Hardbarty talks Anthony Walker Jr. or Kyle Duggar. I have not researched either one of these guys, and I don't have the background on either to even give you an answer on that. I apologize, Hardbarty talks. I don't want to just flip a coin here without knowing here. I'll try to hit that back in case those are late games. Flex PPR, Agnew, Singletary, AP, or Jared Cook. Ugh. Singletary, I don't want to flex a tight end, and I don't want Peterson yet. Half-point PPR, Goddard, MG3, or Connor. Gotta pick Connor. Pick 2, Goddard and Connor. Ugh, yuck. Andrew, start 2. Bateman, Ayuk, Galladay, Sanders, PPR. Sanders and Bateman. Cooper, Debo, or Marquise Brown. Debo, too good to sit despite the injury concerns. Dan Earl or Zach Ertz, PPR. Probably Zach Ertz of those 2. That's all of them. I hope that I hit them all before game time for you guys. There are a couple that I skipped over that I will go back to Let me see what this one is. This first of all, I'm going to go to this one that I just completely spaced on here. And let's talk about, and there goes my light in the background. I never thought that would happen on the Sunday show. I guess I didn't charge enough. Anthony Walker Jr. I need to research these guys. Let me call these guys up for you, Hard Body Talks, and let me hope that these are guys in late games, because I literally am spacing on these guys. I don't have an Anthony Walker Jr. On this choice here. So I'm going to assume that neither one of these are players that are actually being researched. Yeah, so I don't have either one of them. So, all right, we will skip right over that one. Let's see who's next here. I'm going to scroll right back up to get in all these ones that I missed here that were not about actual questions. Let's see here. Albert O laughs out loud. Alex laughs out loud at Albert O. Vansco says Albert O or OK Buddha. I got you. This was me struggling with the name here. All you guys got the names for me. I appreciate that. You always got my back. Let's see who else is up here that I didn't hit that wasn't a choice. Vansco says I also got another potential Tony start. Currently I have Claypool slotted in, but I'm not sold on the Claypool Big Ben connection anymore. It looks like you probably have already had to make that choice, Vansco, based on when they played. If it were me, I would have picked Tony here. I understand what you're saying about Big Ben. Who did I just say? Did I say Claypool or did I say Tony? Whoever I just said, I meant to say Claypool. I trust him over Tony at this point. Not saying that it couldn't go well for Tony, but I would trust Claypool here. MB, I think I missed this one. I have Kyler and D-Hop help. My choice is to not play either one of them this week. Hopefully that you have done the same. And if your choices are in later games, you still have the opportunity to make that choice. If you have other options, perhaps you can still surf the waiver wire for another quarterback if you need one to go with here in one of the later games. Garoppolo should be available, probably on your waiver wire. Potentially Ryan Tannehill might be available. There are some options for you should you need them here. I would not trust either one of these two guys, but you are going to keep an eye on your reports there. Vansco to Bars in the Tuck. Sony is a top 3 handcuff if Henderson goes down. Solomon Rashid. I'm sorry, Solomon. You say, is Amari Cooper mad at flex? If you're asking me if Amari Cooper is a good flex player, then I would say yes. I would put him in your lineup for sure. Let's see. Vansco responds about Cole Ward's question, keeping the faith and starting CMC. This reminds me that since it's already game time, I had decisions to make on these players, and I didn't change any of them during the show, which I was going to probably change somebody, and I didn't. So let's hope that this works out. Sometimes when you're live streaming, I try to make my changes beforehand, but there were so many things that were up in the air this week, especially the CMC Hubbard choice. I just hope that works out best for me now. Trimsy going with the gut and choosing and trusting CMC. Hope that works out there for you, Trimsy, and choosing Emmanuel Sanders, Beasley, and Jefferson as your flex, because even 70% of CMC is better than most running backs. And I cannot fault you with that way of looking at it at all. I will say that in the one league where I have McCaffrey, I played him. So I hope that helps you out. Senior Cinnabon is here. Do I start Derek Carr or do I hope for Kyler Murray? You have already had to make this choice here. For me, I would have sat Murray. I'm sure that all of you guys that didn't get these questions in, I did not start rapid fire soon enough today. I will need to start that sooner in the future to make sure I get these all in. But for me, it would have been Derek Carr here. If you did not start Carr, there should be other still options available probably on your waiver wire if you need them for the late game, if you decide to go against Murray or if Murray ends up not playing. So you should be able to probably help yourself out there. I think Garoppolo is a player that's probably available in most leagues and probably the safest play in terms of somebody to slot in if you need a backup plan there. Vansco responds to Senior Cinnabon. I'm glad that you helped out there at Vansco. Sitting Kyler, I don't think he plays, and if he does, he'll be howled out there without Hopkins and Green to protocols and Hopkins with the injury concerns. So I certainly don't disagree with that at all, Vansco there. Let me see if there's anybody else that I missed here. I don't think so. Vansco helps me out. See, I don't play IDP, and this is why I did not get the defensive players there for you, hard body talks. Of all the research that I do, I feel like this might be the first time I've had an IDP question on these streams. So I did not have the answer for you, hard body, there, and that would be why. And I don't have the information. I'm not even gonna wager a guess based on what I do know about, because as I said, I don't play IDP, and it's not something that I put a lot of research into there. So hard body talks. I do appreciate the chat question. In that situation, I simply will try to give you my honest answer if it's not something that I research, or if it's not something that I feel like I have a great answer for you for. I'm never going to try to sway you in the way of something that I don't feel like I know what I'm doing with there. Vansco, you say Anthony Walker Jr. is a linebacker, Duggar is a safety. Appreciate that, Vansco. And you say that I stuck with Claypool. Good to know. And that is all the chats. So, wow, that was a lot of chats today. Glad to have all you guys with us. I hope that I got everybody in time to make the decisions that you wanted to make there. For all of our other information, I will just wrap things up. We've had that scroll on the bottom of the screen the whole time for the 6 picks game, so I'm glad that didn't interfere with any of our other graphics, that those picks are closed. So we hope that all of you were able to make those picks to get your players in there to try to take over that top spot from the current season leader, Vansco, who is also backing me up on the IDP players. Do appreciate that. Let's go ahead and promo that one more time real quick. 6 picks. This is our thumbnail for this week. Again, the link is in the description area below if you still want to check it out and just see how that works for future weeks. It's very simple. It's 6 fantasy matchups that occur within the same games. You pick the winner of each matchup in the comments section on that video, and there's no cost or anything like that, but you're simply playing amongst you guys to show off your fantasy football skills. And again, remind you, last week it was Cash Money Wilson and Bill Romanowski who led the way, both with 4-1 records, and overall our current leaderboard with a minimum of 2 weeks right now, and we keep that leaderboard by win percentage. It is Vansco who retook the lead, Michael McFarland and James Kazi rounding out the leaders. And that is our 6 picks game, and that is our show for today on Sunday Pregame. We got a lot of information in there. Hope that we helped you out there a whole lot. Vansco with a late chat here says, I guess that Hopkins-Debo matchup is a wash. Good point, Vansco. I'm glad that you brought it up. In any of these matchups in the 6 picks game, if either player is declared inactive before the game starts, then that will not be a win or a loss for anybody who picked it. So this has happened with a couple of matchups already. Last week with Dak Prescott and Kirk Cousins, and also previous matchup, I believe, was Christian McCaffrey and Dalvin Cook. We just simply felt like that was the fairest way to do it. I shouldn't say we, it's me, but I say we a lot. Whichever guy, it doesn't matter who it is, as long as they're declared inactive before the game starts. If they end up injured during a game, then that matchup is still gonna count. But if they're declared inactive, there's no way I'm gonna count. I'm not gonna credit somebody for a win just because the other guy, wasn't able to play. So that matchup will simply go away. That's why last week was 4-1 for those guys as a leader instead of like a 6-pick total. So that's the deal with any of these matchups that end up being with inactives. That's how we work it. I just thought that was the fairest way to do it. So again, that's 6 picks. We'll look for that in future weeks. And obviously those picks are closed already for this week. So for those of you that played, good luck. For those of you just getting into your regular fantasy matchups, good luck as well. I know I see some football has already started on my screen. It is, of course, I'm in Buffalo here, so I'm Bills Mafia. So in my screen, I have had the Buffalo game pop up. I do see that T. Higgins is already off to a good start there. So hopefully that T. Higgins selection that we talked about earlier, let's see if I can take a look overall really quick and see who's currently off to a fast start on my other screen before we close up the stream here. Nobody huge starts for quarterbacks so far. Cordell Patterson off to a good start for Atlanta, as is Mixon, as is Booker, as is Hyde. There's not a whole lot of play to look at so far, but those are the guys that are in there so far. T. Higgins off to the best start for wide receivers, and tight ends is, look at Evan Ingram. Look who's back. Evan Ingram currently at 10 fantasy points already in the first quarter. Who didn't know that one of the most unpredictable players in fantasy football, and one of the players that I dislike predicting the most, Evan Ingram, would be off to a top start? Who didn't know that was going to happen? Oh, this is how it goes at any rate. Touchdown for Joe Burrow. Oh, no, not a touchdown for Joe Burrow. A defensive touchdown for Cleveland on an interception. All right, well, at any rate, the games are underway. We're going to wrap up the stream. My light already turned off behind me, so no reason not to wrap it up sooner than later. We hope that all of you guys are able to go out there and get W's for this Week 9 matchup, and, of course, go out there and enjoy watching all of your football on this Sunday and also the Sunday night and the Monday night games as well. A lot of good football to watch. So we look forward to a great day on that. And I will wrap this up by saying, as always, good luck in fantasy. We'll see you next time.